I was halfway through my evening cup of chamomile tea when the phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail these days. It was either telemarketers or Emily reminding me to pick up almond milk because Kyle refused to drink cheap stuff. But something in my gut told me to answer. "Thomas Hale," I said. Silence. Then a voice I recognized, but strained, shaken. "Mr. Hale. It's Rick. Rick Donovan. My night security guard. Good man. Early 50s. Former Marine. Steady as stone. The kind of person who never raised his voice, never complained, never called unless something had burned down. Rick? What's wrong?" More silence. I heard him exhale shakily, like he'd been holding his breath for too long. "Sir, I need you to come down here. To the building. Now." I straightened in my chair. "Did something happen? A break-in?" "I can't explain over the phone," he whispered. Whispered. Rick never whispered. "You need to see this for yourself. And don't tell your daughter." My heart lurched. "Rick, what the hell does Emily have to do with?" "Please, Mr. Hale." His voice cracked. "Just come. Alone. Don't tell anyone you're coming." A chill ran the length of my spine. I looked around my quiet living room, the framed photos on the mantel, the lamp casting its soft yellow glow, the home that had once been peaceful before it became a revolving door for requests, demands, and subtle accusations that I wasn't being supportive enough. I lowered my voice. "Rick, are you safe?" A beat. "Yes, sir. But I don't know for how long." That was enough. I grabbed my keys, slipped on my jacket, and stepped outside into the cool Arizona evening. My hands trembled slightly as I locked the door. Not from fear, at least not fear I could put a name to, but from uncertainty. Rick was not a man who spooked easily. If something had rattled him this badly, it had to be serious. As I backed out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of the upstairs window. Emily's shadow passed by it. Lights still on. I felt that same cold ripple move through me. Rick's words echoed in my mind the entire drive there. "And don't tell your daughter." The drive to my building took 15 minutes, long enough for the memories to start slipping in uninvited. 7 years since Margaret passed. 7 years of learning how to cook for one. How to sleep in a bed that suddenly felt too big. How to fill silence that used to be shared. I'd built a quiet routine. Morning coffee on the back patio, monthly bookkeeping for my remaining clients, afternoons spent tending to my small strip mall, 6 units, good tenants, decent income. A manageable life. Peaceful, predictable, until Emily moved back in. Just for a couple of weeks. "Dad," she'd said, standing in my doorway, with tears in her eyes and suitcases at her feet. "Kyle got laid off, and we just need time to get back on our feet." Weeks turned into months. Months into nearly a year. Groceries I never ate filled my fridge. Subtle comments about how big houses were too much responsibility for someone your age crept into conversations. And then the requests, small at first. Gas money, help with the phone bill, then larger. Loan for Kyle's business idea. A down payment for a starter condo. Always framed as temporary, always wrapped in guilt if I hesitated. I told myself it was stress, that Emily needed stability, that Kyle just hadn't found the right job yet. But deep down, I'd begun to feel like a guest in my own home. So when Rick's call came urgent, trembling, warning me not to tell my own daughter, it struck a nerve I'd been ignoring for months. By the time I pulled into the dimly lit parking lot of my strip mall, unease was already blooming in my chest. The place looked normal. Lights on inside the small grocery store, neon signs from the pizza shop flickering, the hum of the old air unit on the roof. But normal felt like a mask tonight. I spotted Rick pacing near the side entrance, shoulders tight, eyes scanning the lot like he expected someone to jump out at him. When he saw my truck, his posture stiffened. He hurried toward me. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice low and brittle. "We need to go inside. I'll show you everything." I swallowed. "Rick, what exactly did you see?" He looked at me with eyes that seemed older than they had a day ago. "Something that's going to change everything, Mr. Hale." He opened the door, and we stepped inside. "Hale W. To the sing. We're gonna make WW. You can may. With crit. And 17WW. The hallway lights buzzed faintly as Rick guided me through the back corridor of the building. His steps were quick, nervous, almost jittery. I'd known him for 6 years, and I'd never once seen the man anything but calm. Tonight, he kept glancing over his shoulder, like someone might be following us. "Rick," I said quietly, "you're scaring me more than whatever's on that footage." He swallowed hard. Just wait until you see it, sir." We entered the small surveillance room. 4 monitors, old filing cabinets, the hum of outdated equipment. Rick shut the door behind us, locked it, and motioned me closer. I pulled the clip from last night. He clicked a timestamp. 1:14 a.m. Tuesday. The grainy black and white footage flickered to life, aimed directly at the hallway outside my office. My breath caught. Emily, my daughter, and Kyle, right behind her. Both wearing dark clothes, Emily with her hair tied back, Kyle glancing around like a petty thief. Rick paused the video. "Your office is supposed to be locked after 7 p.m. No tenant has access." "Play it," I whispered. The footage resumed. Emily used a key, my key, to let them in. Kyle went straight to my desk drawers, pulling them open, rifling through file folders with the urgency of someone searching for buried treasure. Emily took pictures with her phone page after page, document after document. My tax records, lease agreements, vendor contracts. Then Kyle moved to the safe. I watched the man I'd let into my home kneel down and spin the dial like he already knew the combination. It clicked open. I felt my stomach twist. He pulled out my backup keys, every unit, every storage closet, and slipped them into his pocket. Emily leaned over him, whispering. The audio had no sound. But Rick raised a finger and switched cameras. Another angle. A closer one. A tiny microphone I'd forgotten he'd installed years ago in the event of vandalism. Emily's voice came through faint but clear. "Dad will never know. The lawyer will handle the rest once he signs it all over." Kyle chuckled. "He's old, Em. He'll fold. Just give it a few more weeks." My knees buckled. I gripped the edge of the desk to stay upright. Every assumption I'd clung to, every excuse I'd made for them, shattered. Rick put a hand on my shoulder. Gentle. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hale. But there's more." I didn't think my chest could tighten any more than it had watching the first video, but Rick's expression told me otherwise. He hesitated before pulling up the next file. This was from 2 nights ago. Different camera. He clicked play. The screen showed the back alley behind the building dimly lit, mostly used for deliveries. Emily stood there, pacing, arms wrapped around herself. Not nervous, focused, determined. A car pulled up. Silver sedan. Out stepped a man I'd never seen before, late 50s, slicked back hair, confident in the way someone is when they know exactly what they're doing. Emily handed him a folder. I recognized the colored tabs instantly, my property portfolio documents. The man flipped through them casually. "Everything's in here?" he asked. Emily nodded. "We just need Dad to agree to sell. Kyle will pressure him." Pressure. The word stung, like I was livestock being herded into a chute. The stranger closed the folder with a snap. "It'll be a fast sale. Cash buyer. No inspections, no delays. And once the deal closes," he held up 2 fingers, "I get my finder's fee. You get your cut." My blood ran cold. Emily smiled. My daughter smiled. Good. Once Dad signs, we'll handle the rest. I gripped the edge of the monitor so tightly, my knuckles whitened. Rick paused the footage. Sir, that man is bad news. I've seen him before. Real estate vultures hire him to talk desperate owners into selling for pennies. Pennies. My strip mall. My income. My retirement. Everything Margaret and I built. Play the rest, I muttered. The man leaned closer to Emily. If he hesitates, remind him he's getting older. Remind him he shouldn't be managing property anymore. People your age can nudge him, stress him, make him doubt himself. Emily laughed softly. Already working on it. That was it. I stepped back from the screen, nausea climbing my throat. My own daughter, plotting to strip me of the only stability I had left. My legs felt unsteady. Why? I whispered to no one. Rick shut off the monitor. Mr. Hale, whatever they're planning, they're close. You needed to see this before it was too late. I stared at the dark screen, my reflection faint in its surface. A man in his 60s, yes, but not weak, not finished. Not someone to be cornered like an animal. They thought they knew me. They thought they could manipulate me into signing away 40 years of work. They were wrong, and this time, I wasn't going to pretend I didn't see it. I drove home in a silence so thick it felt like a physical weight pressing against my ribs. The streetlights blurred past the windshield, but my mind wasn't on the road. It replayed the footage, over and over. Emily's voice, Kyle's grin, the stranger's folder snapping shut. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my hands had steadied, but something deeper inside me had shifted like a door I'd kept locked for years had finally swung open. I stepped into the house quietly. Too quietly, maybe. From the kitchen, Emily appeared with a smile bright enough to blind. Dad, you're home early. Want some tea? I made a fresh pot. She'd never made tea in her life. Kyle emerged behind her, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Tom, buddy, he said, clapping me lightly on the back. We were just talking about you, thinking maybe this weekend we could go look at smaller places for you. Something easier to manage. Those big houses get overwhelming at your age. My age. Before tonight, I might have swallowed the insult and let it slide. Now it landed differently. Emily swooped in, linking her arm through mine, guiding me toward the dining table as if I were fragile. Dad, the market's on fire right now. If you sold the strip mall soon, you could make such a profit. You could relax, travel, enjoy life. Her voice had a syrupy sweetness. I recognized too well. Margaret used to call it Emily's cupcake tone. Pretty on top, but hiding something dense underneath. Kyle nodded, his smile too wide, too eager. Yeah, man. No stress, no tenants calling, no repairs. Think about it. We can help you handle everything. I looked at them, really looked. The exaggerated politeness, the coordinated script, the subtle nudges designed to make me doubt myself. It was all too smooth, too rehearsed, too familiar now that I'd seen the footage. I'll think about it, I said calmly, pulling my arm from Emily's. But not tonight. I walked past them, ignoring the startled glance they exchanged. In my room, I closed the door and sat on the edge of the bed. They thought they were nudging me, guiding me, manipulating me, and maybe until today they had been. But the curtain had been pulled back. The show was over. And this time, I wasn't the one being led anywhere. The next morning, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in months, but should have reached out to far sooner. Thomas Hale? To what do I owe this honor? Linda Barrows's voice came through the receiver, warm and familiar. We'd gone to community college together before life took us down different roads. Mine into accounting and quiet routines, hers into law and relentless litigation. She was one of the sharpest minds I'd ever known. "Linda," I said, steadying my breath, "I need your help." An hour later, I sat in her downtown office, sleek, glass walls, shelves lined with casebooks and awards she never bragged about, but absolutely deserved. She took one look at my face and set aside the stack of files she'd been reviewing. "All right," she said, folding her hands. "Tell me everything." I plugged in the flash drive Rick had given me. We watched the footage together, the break-in, the rummaging, Emily's words, Kyle's laughter, the alleyway meeting. Linda didn't interrupt once. When the final clip ended, she leaned back slowly, processing. "Thomas, this isn't just concerning." She tapped her pen thoughtfully against her desk. "This is classic elder financial manipulation." The words stung, but the truth in them grounded me. "The man in the alley," she continued, pulling up his image on her screen. "I know him. He brokers under-the-table deals for desperate or vulnerable property owners. Fast cash predator. He's been fined 3 times, never convicted, but always circling." My throat tightened. "And Emily?" Linda sighed. "She and Kyle are setting you up. They pressure you into selling. They present the buyer. You sign. They use legal loopholes, probably claiming beneficial interest to seize control or skim off proceeds." She fixed her eyes on mine. "Thomas, if you go along with any sale right now, you'll lose everything." I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the truth settle into place. "What do I do?" Linda didn't hesitate. "First, asset protection. We restructure ownership documents. Next, a full review of your will and power of attorney. You revoke any authority Emily or Kyle might have now or in the future." She leaned forward. "And you keep quiet. The moment they suspect you know, they'll escalate." I nodded, a resolve taking shape inside me. "I'm ready." For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt the faint stirrings of control returning, and I wasn't about to let go of it again. 2 days later, after a sleepless night and a morning where Emily's chipper "Good morning, Dad" grated harder than I'd like to admit, I drove back to the strip mall. I told Emily I had a bookkeeping emergency. She didn't question it. She was too busy planning brunch with her friend, which I now suspected was code for checking in with that alleyway stranger. Rick was waiting for me outside the building, a thermos in one hand, dark circles under his eyes. "Morning, Mr. Hale," he said, unlocking the door. "Yes," I said. "All of it." Inside the surveillance room, he sat at the computer and pulled up prior months one file after another. "I didn't want to overwhelm you the other night," he said quietly. "But there's more." And there was. Much more. Footage from 6 weeks ago showed Kyle walking into the property office on a Sunday afternoon while I was at Emily's cousin's baby shower. He went straight to the tenant's drop box, where rent checks were slipped through a slot, opened it, and pocketed 2 envelopes, glancing around like a man with practice. "I reported missing payments from the pet supply store and the nail salon," I murmured. "They swore they'd submitted them." Rick nodded grimly. "They did." A lump formed in my throat, but he wasn't finished. He opened another file. This one, from 2 months prior. Emily sat at my desk, carefully tracing my signature on a maintenance authorization form. She even practiced it first 3 times on a sticky note. The camera caught the whole thing. "This one approved a $1,200 roof inspection you didn't ask for," Rick said. "Invoice. Went to some contractor Kyle knows. Never did any actual work." Another file. Kyle at 2 a.m., entering the building with a flashlight. Another. Emily, rifling through my tenant files while pretending to help straighten up. And another. The 2 of them, arriving together late at night, whispering, laughing, moving with the ease of people who knew they wouldn't get caught. I felt something inside me go cold. Not sharp or explosive, just cold. A deep, heavy freeze where trust used to live. "How long?" I asked. Rick's answer was soft but honest. "Since before they moved in. Before they ever asked you for help." That was the part that hit hardest. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't a rough patch. This was strategy. This was months, maybe years, of careful planning. And my door, my wallet, my trust had been open wide. Too wide. Rick closed the files. "Mr. Hale, what are you going to do?" I looked at the frozen screen of Kyle stuffing a check into his jacket pocket. "I'm going to stop pretending I don't see what's right in front of me." The next week moved with a quiet, deliberate rhythm, like the slow tightening of a knot. Every morning, I woke before Emily and Kyle, brewed my coffee, and shut myself inside my office with stacks of papers, passwords, and folders spread across the desk. I moved like a man disassembling a bomb carefully, methodically, without drawing attention. The first thing I did was secure my accounts. New passwords, two-step authentication, alerts on every transaction. I closed a joint emergency fund Emily had once convinced me to open, just in case something happened. Then, I contacted my bank and removed her as an authorized view-only user. She didn't need to be monitoring my accounts under the guise of helping. Next came the locks. I hired a locksmith to rekey every exterior door at the strip mall and my house. Emily asked why, when she saw the receipt on the counter. I shrugged. Routine maintenance. She didn't realize the small metal click she heard that afternoon was the sound of Kyle's stolen keys, becoming worthless. I rearranged file cabinets, removed sensitive documents, stored my original property deeds in Linda's firm's vault, the safest place they could be. Each step tightened the boundary they'd assumed they controlled. Meanwhile, Linda worked quickly. She drafted a formal notice addressed to Emily and Kyle, outlining the legal consequences of unauthorized access to my property and files. "We won't serve it yet," she said. "Not until the confrontation. But it'll be ready." And then came the biggest step, one I never thought I'd need: the irrevocable trust paperwork. My house, my strip mall, my accounts, my investments, all placed under a structure they couldn't challenge, couldn't manipulate, couldn't touch. "This will protect everything," Linda assured me. "No one can talk you into signing anything away ever again." I nodded, though my chest tightened with a strange mix of sadness and relief. Protecting assets shouldn't feel like mourning, but it did. Each night, Emily and Kyle grew more attentive, more helpful, more suffocating. Emily cooked dinner unasked. Kyle offered to mow the yard. They hovered like hawks circling prey who hadn't realized he was cornered. Except I had. And soon, they'd know it. Because I wasn't waiting for them to make their next move. I was planning a controlled confrontation. One where every variable, every document, every truth was on my side, not theirs. The game they'd started months ago was about to end. And this time, I'd be the one setting the rules. I set the dining table the way Margaret used to. Placemats straight, silverware aligned, glasses polished. The ritual steadied my hands. Tonight needed to be calm, deliberate, final. I roasted chicken, steamed vegetables, uncorked a bottle of wine Emily always said she loved. Everything looked welcoming, ordinary, a stage set for a scene they didn't see coming. At 6 sharp, their car pulled into the driveway. I heard their laughter before the door even opened. They came in with bright smiles, practically glowing. Emily kissed my cheek. "Dad, this looks amazing. Did you want to talk about the sale tonight?" Kyle grinned, draping an arm over her shoulder. "Yeah, Tom. We knew you'd come around. Market's too good to ignore." I simply gestured to the table. "Sit." We ate the first few minutes in strained politeness. Kyle talking about a podcast he listened to. Emily complimenting the seasoning like she had any idea what seasoning tasted like. Then, when the plates were half finished, I slid the manila folder onto the table. Their chatter stopped. "What's that?" Emily asked, a note of something brittle in her voice. "Proof," I said, "of what you've been doing." I opened the folder and spread the printed stills. Emily and Kyle breaking into my office. Kyle pocketing keys. Emily photographing documents. The alley meeting. Kyle froze. Emily's face drained of color. "Dad," she whispered, this isn't what it looks like. "And this," I continued, sliding out Linda's letter, "is the legal notice regarding unauthorized access, theft, forgery, and coercion." Kyle shot to his feet. "Hold on. You can't just... This is taken out of context." "Kyle," I said, voice calm. "Sit down." He didn't. "Someone manipulated the footage," he said. "Deepfake or whatever. You're being tricked." Emily grabbed my wrist, tears rising on cue. "Dad, please. We would never hurt you. We were trying to help. You're overreacting." I pulled my hand away. "You have 30 days to move out of my home," I said. "You will have no involvement in my business. And you no longer have access to my accounts or documents." Emily shook her head, stunned. "Dad, you can't do this." "I can," I said, standing. "And I already have." Kyle's face twisted with anger. But beneath it I saw something else. Fear. They had expected a puppet. Instead, they found the strings cut. I walked to my office and closed the door behind me. Their raised voices echoed through the house, but not one word they said changed a thing. The next morning, the house felt like a pressure cooker. Emily stood in the kitchen with puffy eyes, clutching a mug of cold coffee she hadn't touched. Kyle paced behind her like a caged animal. "Dad," Emily began, voice trembling in that careful, practiced way. "We need to talk about last night." I sat at the table, quietly peeling an orange. "There's nothing to discuss." Kyle slammed his hand against the counter. "You're abandoning your family. Over some misunderstanding?" "It wasn't a misunderstanding," I said evenly. "It was a plan. A deliberate one." Emily stepped toward me, tears streaming now. "We only did any of that because we were worried about you. You've been so forgetful lately. We thought you needed help." There. It was the gaslighting, the subtle accusation of senility. I looked her square in the eye. "Linda has advised me to document every conversation from this point forward. Let me know if you'd like today's added to the file." Emily stiffened, breath catching. Kyle scoffed. "People will think you're losing it, Tom. A man your age, making rash decisions." "People will think what they want," I said. "It doesn't change the truth." Kyle tried again. "Look, let's just reset. Forget the video. Forget the alley. We can work something out." "We can't," I said. "Because what you did wasn't an accident. It was months of manipulation and theft." For a moment, the mask slipped. Kyle's expression hardened, jaw clenched, eyes full of something venomous. But then, Emily grabbed his arm. "Let it go," she whispered. We'll leave." 2 days later, with the formal notice from Linda, delivered and the threat of legal action pressing down on them, they began to pack. Boxes stacked by the door. Tense whispers behind closed doors. The slam of cabinets. The quiet panic of people whose plans had fallen apart. On the 5th day, the predatory investor, the man from the alley, called my office. My voicemail picked up. "This is a misunderstanding," he said curtly. "We can still do a deal." Linda contacted him within the hour. He never called again. By the 3rd week, Emily and Kyle drove away in silence, no tears, no apologies, no promises to stay in touch. Just the sound of their engine fading down the street. For the first time in a long time, the house exhaled. And so did I. The house felt different once they were gone. Not just quieter, cleaner, lighter, like someone had lifted a heavy rug and finally shaken out the dust. Even the air smelled different, as if it had been holding its breath and could finally breathe again. In the weeks that followed, life settled into something steady, something good. Most mornings I drove to the strip mall, checked in with tenants, reviewed numbers in my office with the small window overlooking the parking lot. Rick always greeted me with a respectful nod, but after everything, I made a point to sit with him longer, share a cup of coffee, ask about his family. One afternoon, as we reviewed the new camera placements he'd installed, I handed him an envelope. "You've earned this," I said. He frowned, confused, then opened it. His eyes widened. "Mr. Hale, this is a raise." "More than that," I said. "It's trust. You told me the truth when no one else would." He looked away for a moment, swallowing hard. "Just doing my job, sir." "You did more than that," I said. "You protected me." He nodded, but the gratitude in his eyes said more than words. Linda worked just as tirelessly on the legal front. After a maze of paperwork, signatures, and transfers, she called me into her office one bright Wednesday morning. "It's done," she said, sliding a final document toward me. "Your trust is fully established and locked. Your assets are secure. No one, not your daughter, not her husband, not any opportunist, can manipulate you again." I looked at the pages, the thick stack of legal armor she'd built around my life. "Thank you," I said quietly. She smiled. "You did the hard part, Thomas. You opened your eyes." That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of iced tea, watching the sun sink behind the rooftops, soft gold fading into violet. For the first time in years, my shoulders felt loose, my heart steady. Growing older didn't make me weak. It made me seasoned, watchful, still capable of drawing boundaries, of protecting what mattered. Trust was something to be earned, not assumed. And peace, real peace, was worth every confrontation, every painful truth. The phone rang inside. I answered to hear the director of the community center thanking me for the donation I'd sent earlier that week. "Your support helps so many people, Mr. Hale," she said warmly. I smiled, looking at the quiet street outside my window. "Happy to help," I replied. When the call ended, I set the phone down and let the stillness wrap around me. My future was finally and firmly my own. This story was brutal. But this story, on the right-hand side, is even more insane.